Hi, you're watching Tom O'Connor from Inside Leap, and I want to take the moment today to talk to you about mastering the fundamentals that almost all candidates get wrong when they're applying for interview. Myth number one. When you realize that the only purpose of your CV initially is to get you an interview, then you don't need to be writing 7 and 8 pages long CVs in order to be able to make that strong first impression. Typically today, employers, whether it's a recruitment agency or HR personnel, spend anywhere between 3 and 8 seconds in order for them to evaluate your CV in the first instance, to classify basically, will we consider this for interview or for further evaluation for consideration for interview or not. So it's absolutely critical that what we call in advertising, what's above the fold, that means what's literally in that first half a page on your CV literally strikes in this case, the employment HR personnel right between the eyes in terms of what they're looking for. And this leads into the second big mistake that most people make when they're applying for a job, and that is they almost always are coming from the position of what's in it for them. Now that's natural for everybody, you know, any human being is always going to be to a certain degree looking at what's in it for me. But the purpose of a job is obviously to fulfill some requirement inside an organization. That typically means that there's some constraint for an employer that by having you be recruited will help eliminate that constraint and allow the employer to be able to achieve some objective, which bottom line usually means making more profit. So if you're coming in and you're coming from the position of basically what you can get out of an organization, how much of a pay you're going to get, what kind of training, there's a disconnect between the initial purpose of why a job exists, and that's to fill some requirement for an employer. So myth number 2 is that the primary reason for applying for a job is simply for you to get what you want. In actuality, the primary reason for any job that exists is for an employer to get first and foremost what they need and what they require. Myth number 3, the best person is the person who gets a job. This simply isn't the case, and we're going to go into that in a little while, perhaps in another video, but in actuality, in the current environment, it's not the best candidate who gets the job. It's the best candidate who an employer perceives to be the best candidate is the one that gets the job. What that basically means is that the person who secures the job, the person actually who gets awarded the offer, so to speak, of employment, is the person who is perceived as the best candidate. That's a critical thing to understand, because when you understand that the most important aspect of an interview or of CV preparation is building a strong perception about the kind of candidate that you are, and that a candidate that closely matches what an employer is looking for. So here are 3 things to take away from this short video if you're applying for a job today. First we'll deal if you're applying to get an interview. On your CV, have a look at your CV and look at what's above the fold. What's that first impression? From an employer's point of view, does it connect directly with what they want? And that obviously assumes that you already know what an employer is looking for. If you've literally written your CV and you don't have a clue which employer you're going for or what the employer is looking for, then almost certainly you have put yourself at a disadvantage. It's critical that when you draft your CV that is reflective of the employer's needs. Secondly, when you look at your CV, look at it from the point of view of, does it have your strongest assets up front and center? If you follow the traditional approach of CV writing, which is chronologically based, then what you'll find is you have your contact details, you typically have your education, then followed by your career, then followed by, in this case, hobbies and resume. That CV, unfortunately, in today's environment is very limited for a couple of reasons. One is that it's pointing to the past. Typically, it's only reflective of what you've done and typically your roles and responsibilities. It says almost nothing about the value that you can provide a future employer, if you think about it. Secondly is that your CV, if it's a chronologically based CV, and most CVs are out there that are chronologically based at the moment, it means that your CV doesn't stand out from anybody else's. You could have phenomenal value that you can provide an organization, but because you've chosen to put it in a chronological format, it looks exactly like 9 out of 10 other candidates. Particularly if you've stuck to the traditional what my roles and responsibilities were. Because, for example, if you're an accountant and you're applying for a financial based job, well, what you did in your previous jobs, managing the books, maybe developing profit and loss balance sheets, those types of functions are going to be the same as somebody else who's coming from an accountancy background, and you don't differentiate. Thirdly, your tip for today from the point of view of writing CV is to look at the presentation and the sequencing. It's critical, as I mentioned earlier, that you understand and know what an employer is looking for. And so it becomes very important that you sequence the information correctly. That basically means is that if an employer puts down communication leadership skills are critical to what they're looking for, that you need to have some reference to communication, influence, whatever the core skill sets that they're looking for, up near the top of your CV. If it's not, you're going to find that again you're making the employer work, or the recruitment agency have to work and figure out and almost decode what you have on your CV in order for them to figure out if indeed you are a good candidate for a potential role. Now, from the point of view of if you're actually going for an interview, 3 useful tips. First and foremost, absolutely critical, know who you're going for, know in terms of the company and the culture. The first round of interviews typically will be with a HR professional, and the purpose of the HR professional is to evaluate you typically from a company fit and a culture fit into the organisation. Even if you're an exceptional candidate, but you don't fit and reflect the values that the company espouses, then almost certainly you will not get the job. So it's very important you understand who the company is, what they're about, and what are the challenges they're facing. Secondly is, rather than preparing stories when you're going into an interview, as is common for many candidates, you should have a clear idea of what are the key assets, in this case the transferable skills or the skills that they're looking for in a candidate. And how you can find that out is by obviously speaking with the recruitment professional that you went through and find out they've dealt directly, or at least they should have done, with the employer to find out what is it that they're looking for. Remember, as I mentioned earlier, a job exists because of a specific need. In order for that need to be met, you have to know exactly what an employer is looking for. And when you do, what that allows you to do is, before you get into an interview, to actually figure out up front, okay, where are the examples in my career history where I've demonstrated really strongly exactly the kind of things that they're looking for. Thirdly, make sure that your presentation in terms of how you dress, how you stand, your posture, your interpersonal skills in terms of your eye contact, your handshake, the warmth of your smile, all of those things are strong and firm and come across well. In other videos we'll be talking about rapport and matching, which are key skills to be able to develop quickly in an interview in order to make sure it goes well. But for now, effectively people are going to judge you on how you look, the way you speak, and also how you dress. Please make sure, if you're going to succeed in an interview, that you really prepare, not that you overdo, be yourself, be natural, but reflect again the attitude that the company is looking for in terms of the level of professionalism. And you can find out by going on to their website, or indeed if you've known somebody who's worked in the company before, to get a feel for what are the attitudes in terms of the mentality that people in that organisation tend to have. If you'd like to know more, then feel free to check out Inside Leap. It's just showing up on the bottom here, where you can actually go and find out about products, and particularly products we've got on CV preparation, on interview skills, and on conquering redundancy. If any of those apply to you right now and you'd like to know more information, then please check out the link at the bottom, or alternatively you can check out more of our videos on YouTube. Thanks for watching.